Everybody. This is Tetnock here with Blades and Blasters coming to you with what's going to be a series of tutorials and also kind of background on our Dune 2D20 game, also known as Dune Adventures in the Imperium, also known as The Rite of Canley as the campaign name. This game is going to include about 6 people. Never usually will I have more than 5 in a session. So, we'll see how that goes. But this is the only campaign I'm going to run at the time, so my other campaign is on hold at a season break sort of thing. It's going to have Cypher, Walter Pack, Slip, Rogue, Raz, and Prankster. And I'll get into... Cypher is going to be joining me for some of these as well, maybe others, to talk about the game, the history of our house, and so on. But right now, I want to do kind of a very basic tutorial on 2D20 in general and Dune, how it, does those things. Every 2D20 game actually does things just a little differently. Okay. Well, let's talk about the very basics of how you use 2D20. Well, the first thing you do is you have 2 20-sided dice, okay? You're going to roll those, and you're going to... Lower is better, always, unless you're the GM. And you're going to want to get under a certain target number, okay? Each time you roll a die, each die, you can get a certain amount of successes on that die. Usually it's 1 if you roll the target number or below. Okay. You could get multiple successes if you roll under a certain number. Okay. Less than your target number. Rolling a 1 is always a critical success, and that usually gives you 2 successes instead of 1. Each task you're performing is going to have a difficulty set to it, and so you need that many successes to pass. So you're saying, well, you're only rolling two dice, right? So how, if your successes are 3, how do you do that? Well, you could, if you rolled 2 dice, roll, a 1, or roll under, in this case, your skill value, and that would give you, multiple successes to get to 3. Potentially you could have up to 4, so you could succeed that way. But kind of this segues into another thing about 2D20 that's always in every 2D20 game, and that's a concept of momentum and threat, or in some cases it's called doom, and maybe called other things. Heat, I think, is another iteration, and there's probably more. There's a couple 2D20 games I haven't read, including Mutant Chronicles, John Carter of Mars, and Octung, which I will do Octung for sure. So the momentum, they're both meta currency. One's for the GM and one's for the player. I believe it's always momentum for the players. Okay, it's a pool of points that you can use to do extra stuff. That's essentially what it boils down to. For the GM, it is the same thing. It's a pool of resources that lets you do extra stuff. Now, there's one big kind of philosophy that people who don't like 2D20 games is that as a GM you should be able to do all this stuff anyway. Okay, but there are certain points, like especially when you buy dice, which there's a concept for momentum and threat. It's called create an opportunity, and that's usually how you get more dice that you roll. Okay, so you're rolling 2d20 normally. Well, if you want to roll 3d20, you can pay your momentum to do so, and each die you buy has a specific cost of momentum or threat, depending on the game. 2d20 is actually your more expensive. I don't know about like Infinity or some of the other games, but Dune is less expensive. But in Star Trek And Dune, for instance, your third d20 will cost 1 momentum, your fourth, and it's per die, your fourth will cost 2, and your fifth will cost 3. So if you did all of them, which you have to, you're going to well, you have to if you're going to do 5 total dice, it would be a total of 6 momentum, which is an entire pool, because your momentum pool can't go higher than 6. Okay, for threat, it's never ending, and you could keep going. Another concept which is prevalent, I think maybe in all of them, is that you as a player, if you don't have enough momentum to do what you want to do, you can give it as threat to the GM instead. So you can say, well, I want 5 dice on this roll, but I don't have enough momentum to do that. Well, you can give me the what you would pay in momentum as threat, which is a lot. A GM can do a lot of damage to you with that threat. There's certain things you can do, and I'm not going to get into the very specifics of what you can do with threat or momentum besides create opportunity. It's very specific to Dune, and it's very specific to the game you're playing. Create opportunity is one you're going to see in all of them, but there's other things you can do. Okay. So that's a very, very key thing in Dune itself, or any 2d20 game, is the use of momentum and threat. So you should keep that in mind. So I'm going to open a character sheet here and kind of show you how it's laid out. And this is also similar to most of the 2d20 games. Some are a little bit more in detail of what you're going to have, kind of like an attribute skill. They're not called that usually. Like Conan's is very, very detailed, whereas Star Trek and Dune is a little more ambiguous. And each of them have their own type of things. I would say Dune is very close to Star Trek in how everything is done. Okay, so I'm gonna let's bring up Ashir. This is Cypher's character. Okay, I've scrolled down to drive and skill. Okay, so to determine your TN in any situation, you would add your drive to your skill of what you're going to use. Okay, so let's say he's using duty and communicate. Okay, so you would add the duty 6, the score of duty, which is 6, and the score of communicate, which is 6. 12 would be his target number. Okay, in this system specifically, I know I mentioned this about being under a certain thing. That's not actually how it works in Dune or Trek necessarily. So what you do is you have foci. Okay, foci are things that you specialize in. They're not necessarily a very specific thing that's in the book that tells you what to do. It could be, right? If you look at communicate and duty, so communicate is both like listening and talking at the same time. It's both kind of handles both those things. So social awareness, like you're in a crowd, you're at a party, you know how to behave. That would be what I would kind of call focus. So if you're in that situation, I say, well, it's a difficulty of 2, and you have focus in it. Whenever you succeed, you would get an extra extra success if you had focus in it. If you did not have focus in it, you would not. Okay, unless you rolled a 1, which is a critical success. So so that's how focuses work. You get a certain amount of them, and please look at my character creation tutorial for this game. It was a bit ago, like several months, but it's still very valid. I didn't have a real great grasp on the game at the time, but everything in there is correct. So go back and look at that. So that's how kind of your roles work and your drive plus your skill. Now I'm going to get into a little bit of detail about drives here. Drive, you're supposed to use the drive statement that best relates to the task you're completing. Okay, your top 3 drives are going to get drive statements. Okay, If none of what you're doing does not relate to any of your drive statements, you're supposed to use one that actually doesn't have a drive statement, which is your worst too. So, and realize that your drives, when you do character creation, it's an array 8765 or 45 54, and so once you get to faith and justice here, they're the worst ones, right? And you can't add any points to your drive beyond that. Now you can your skills, but that's not important in this situation. So let's say he's at a party. He's trying to make nice with someone, doing kind of an etiquette kind of thing. And he says, I want to use something for that. And I say, okay. And I say, well, which drive statement do you want to use? What does it have to do with you? Well, let's say he's trying to use truth, because that's his best one. So he says, I seek to uncover many secrets of the universe. Well, he's trying to get in with someone and find out what they know about something. Okay? I would say, yes, that matches your drive statement. You may use truth. Let's say he's trying to dupe the person in some way, trying to lie to them, trying to whatever. I would say, does that uncover the many secrets of the universe? No, you can't use truth. Those who have true power need seldom wield it. Does that power? No, not really. What must be done, duty? Yeah, I could see that. So you can use duty, but you can't use truth of power. So that's a really different thing in Dune versus all the other 2D20s that I've played. So that is unique to Dune as far as I'm aware. I'm pretty sure it is. So it's very interesting that you have to adhere to that drive statement, right? And then whatever, if don't have a drive statement, you can use whichever one you want. And that has a lot of GM can say, yeah, you should do that. So it's a little different in that regard, right? Before I would say, just use security and fitness if I was talking Trek, right? And they say, okay, well, I'll do that. Do I have any foci and in that, and go from there. It doesn't matter when you make a roll. Obviously, I think I alluded to this, but if you're making a roll and you want to use a skill, you can use any drive, or there's no have to do one or the other. Like in Conan, for instance, if you want to make a melee roll, you have to use agility. Something like that. So there's no governing attribute for, that's what I call it in Heroes and Hardships. So there's nothing like that here. It's you can use either for old gamers and people who play old school gamers who've played a lot of old games. The World of Darkness games are a lot like this. At least Chronicles and above, where you can use any skill with any attribute, and it doesn't matter. It's just kind of what based on the situation how you roleplay, which is it's a cool thing, right? So you don't have to. You're not tied using one to with the other, and with something that only has 5 of each is pretty important, I would say. So yeah, that's the very basic dice mechanics. Other people if you've played 2D20, please understand there are no combat dice in this game. None. No combat dice, not at all. And I'm not going to go into a huge, how do you do that, right? Because every other 2D20 game I've had has combat dice. Star Trek, Conan, both have combat dice. I'm sure most of the other games do. Mutant Chronicles, Infinity. I can't imagine they don't have combat dice. So yeah, this is the very, very least crunchy of the 2D20 systems, I would say. So yeah, this is a very, very basic overlook at the dice system for 2D20. I I don't think I'm missing anything. I'm trying to think if I am, and I don't think so. Of the very basics of how you make rolls against difficulties. The difficulties are usually either if you're doing some specific task that's in the book, it'll tell you what the difficulty is, or if you're the GM and you have an idea, you tell them what the difficulty is. Okay, so just remember, 2 dice, 2d20. You have a momentum pool. You have a threat pool. And the threat is for the GM. The momentum is for the players. If you've played any 2d20 game, this is going to be really simple. You could almost even just skip this video, besides the drive stuff that I've talked about. And so yeah, that's going to be our first tutorial about Dune 2d20, the dice mechanics, how simple it is. I'll make a couple example rolls for you just so you can see what it looks like. So if I click on my skill battle, let's say, so we'll do duty battle. So he wants a 10, right? Did it roll? Did not roll. Okay, duty battle. How many dice? So let's say he didn't buy any dice or anything. So I'll submit that using focus. No, he doesn't have any battle focus anyway. So let's see what it rolls. Okay, so this is a good example. So his target number was 10. He rolled a 12, which is above 10, so he doesn't get a success. It tells you your target right there. He rolled a 5, so yeah. So he got 1 success. So if the difficulty was 1, he would have succeeded. That's pretty much it. Very simple. Yeah, that's how that works. I could click it a couple times and see if it would roll a 1. So there's 2 10s, so that's good. I wonder if this is just basically, I'm just looking at the sheet right now to see, hey, if I do focus, will it actually give me multiple successes when I... Yeah, there you go. I rolled a 2 and it gave me 2 successes. Why? Because I had focus. Yeah. So yeah, that's how Dune 2d20 works. For a dice pool mechanic, and that's going to be it for this video. We're going to have more system tutorial stuff, get into a little bit more detail of everything, and so you can watch these and get an idea of how to play. Hopefully this will be useful for those who have played 2d20 and those who have never played 2d20 before and are just coming in for the first time, either new to role-playing games in general, which, good luck to you. I hope you join the hobby and appreciate it. And this is not a bad starting point. Honestly, this system is not overly complicated. I feel it's good for the genre. I think there could be other systems you could use, like generic systems, but I feel that doing something like a D&D would be awful. So I think this is a good representation of what Dune could be in a role-playing game. So if you haven't played any 2d20 games before, you have played 2d20, or you're brand new to gaming, tabletop gaming in general, and you're just here because of the movie, the books, whatever, welcome, and follow along with us, and we're going to talk about a lot of things Dune related. And this is our first system tutorial document after our character creation tutorial. So watch that. It'll be in the playlist probably above. And good night. Thanks, everybody.